Hi everybody, it's Jessica. In today's crash course video, I am going to cover in just 5 minutes a few of the ins and outs of Google Sheets. If you want to get into Google Sheets, you can study it for weeks and weeks and weeks, as it is probably what I would say Google's most powerful and robust tool for teachers to use. So in this quick video, I'm just going to get you started in how to manipulate that spreadsheet for teacher use. So what you're looking at here is some fictitious student data. So I have students 1 through 15 and how they performed on a short unit. So we have our pre-test and then an activity that they completed in which they completed 8 questions and 1 short answer, and then the post-test. So let's see how I can get Google Sheets to calculate some of the math for me. The first thing I want to do is note that the middle portion is an activity. So I am going to right-click in this section of the row and click Insert One Row Above, and then type activity here. And I do want to highlight this whole section here and then merge these cells. That way I'm signifying that this whole section here is indeed the activity. For visual appeal, I'm going to go ahead and center my text. And just so I visually can see what I'm doing here, I am going to highlight this section and then use the paint bucket tool and change the color. There. Now my eye can clearly see pre-test, activity, post-test. Now let's do some math. What I'd like to know is what the average score is of this pre-test. So I've highlighted all of those cells. Then I'll click the Sigma button on the far right and select average. And if you notice, it wants to take the average of the things that I highlighted, B3 through B16, which happens to be correct, so I can hit enter. Note that you wouldn't have to highlight those cells. You certainly could type them in by hand if you didn't want to highlight. Now, I also see here that I'd like to know the average of each of these questions. I'm going to bold this here just so my eye sees that clear. So I would like to know what is the average of each question in my activity. So rather than highlight each row and click the Sigma and take average, I see here right next to where my original formula was that I borrowed, there's a tiny little box here. This is going to allow me to drag the formula across. So I can drag the formula, let go, and all of that was calculated automatically. Same with the post-test. I can highlight, hit the Sigma, click average, and double check that I've got my cells right. So L3 through L16, that is correct. Hit enter, there we go. And now I can also then measure the gain. Did my students grow from the pre-test to the post-test? So what I'm going to do, this time I'm going to write my formula. So I'm going to write equal sign sum, meaning do something with the stuff in parentheses. I want to subtract L3 minus B3. Close that off. So now I just want to double check. Did my students really gain 8? Yes. Okay, that's correct. And then I'm going to grab this little blue box here and drag it down and have all of that calculated for me again. Now, what if I want to check, I want to look for points of alarm on my activity. Anytime a student scored a 0, I want my eye to be drawn to that. So I'm going to set up conditional formatting. So I have this section highlighted, and then I can look at format. So I'll click format, conditional formatting, and I want to say C3 through J16, this whole chunk here. If anything is exactly 0, I want to turn that red, and let's make the text yellow. All right, so now any of my scores that are entered in, that will occur. And now I could even do then, what about ones, right? So I can set up another rule. So anything in that section, if it's exactly, and I could also do ranges, right? So if it's exactly 1, we'll leave it green. There you go. So that's just a few functions you can do in Google Sheets to be able to depict and kind of manipulate student data without actually having to calculate that math. If you want to learn more about Google Sheets, you definitely got to check out the Google Training Center, where you can learn specific functions and skills within Google Sheets. It is amazing.